Last year, Hyperliquid airdropped billions of dollars worth of hype tokens, and many early users of the platform walked away with 6 or even 7-figure paydays. Since this massive wealth generation event took place, many people have been trying to figure out what is the next Hyperliquid. And so in this video, I'm going to break down the top perp dexes to farm to get solid airdrops, with a heavy emphasis on ones where I think there actually is still time to get a solid payday. For each option, I'm going to discuss whether you're early or late, and I'm going to tell you if it has potential, if I think it's actually worth it. This is a list of some of the targets, but there's also a few that aren't even on this list here that definitely should be. Now, I think it's important to say up front that perpdex mania is upon us. There's a lot of people farming, and certainly there's more competition for these now than there was last year when the Hyperliquid airdrop came through. So while it's certainly going to be difficult to recreate the conditions of the Hype Season 1 airdrop, I don't think it's impossible, and even just a couple of weeks ago, Avantis, a perpdex on base, absolutely cooked, and many people in my Discord walked away with 5-figure paydays from that one. So yes, moving forward, I do think that some of these will still have solid opportunities. Some, not all, because there is a certain hurdle to farming perpdexes. A lot of people are risk averse, and of course there are ways that we can hedge our strategies, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on in the video. With that all said, what is the next Hyperliquid going to be? Well, potentially, actually, it's just going to be Hyperliquid. So you may notice if you trade on this platform that the points page was recently reset. Hyperliquid just airdropped their Hyper NFTs, all of which are trading for over 50,000 US dollars, and those went to the top 4,000-ish traders from season 1. But yeah, they just reset the points program completely, and so given the fact that Hyperliquid has such a massive market cap, so much mind share, the token is so valuable, and if we open up this page here, that they allocated almost 39% of the total token supply to future emissions and rewards, I think we could safely assume that there is going to be another allocation, another airdrop, and more incentives moving forward. And especially since there are so many new perpdexes popping up and competing, I think Hyperliquid now has even more impetus to run or to kick off their next campaign and issue some of these rewards here in order to maintain their market share and their position within this space. So I do think that trading on Hyperliquid itself is at this point still very positive EV. I've previously made video tutorials walking through this, and I can link it down below if you like. But all of these perpdexes, the basics of how you trade on them is quite similar, and I'm going to just assume from this point moving forward that you do have a basic understanding of how that works. Of course, if you're absolutely new to perpdexes, you do need to be careful, and you should definitely do some research before hopping into trying to farm these, because since we are trading on leverage, there is the possibility to get liquidated and to get wrecked if you are not careful. So please do be careful. And if you want to stick around for the latter part of this video, I'll walk through a strategy that I like to use that hedges my risk by using a delta neutral trading strategy. And I'll actually place a couple trades in a minute and show you exactly how I do that. Okay, next up, aside from Hyperliquid, we've got Based. I have to mention Based because this is basically a wrapper built on top of Hyperliquid, and I just made a video about this one as well. But every time you make a trade on Based, you are also moving volume directly on Hyperliquid, and each trade that you make here on this platform shows up automatically over on Hyperliquid as well. So the bonus of trading here is that you're hitting multiple different airdrops with that same capital. The downside of trading on Based is that they do have a slightly higher fee than that of just trading on the base layer Hyperliquid platform. I do like Based because although it is definitely more expensive, you hit a larger surface area in terms of the number of potential airdrop. Okay, next up, let's talk about Pacifica. Now this one is actually one of my new favorite farms for a couple of different reasons. One of the main reasons why I really like Pacifica is that it's one of the newest ones that has serious backing and that has solid potential. Let me go into the docs here and just take a quick look at the Pacifica points program. So they literally just began this month, a couple of weeks ago on September the 4th. Every week, there's a pool of 500,000 points that are distributed. And so this means that the earlier you get started, the better off you'll be, because since it's points that are capped each week, as we get later on into the farming campaign, it will get harder and harder to actually level up, because once the points here from this latest epoch are earned, they can never be redistributed. That is one of the main reasons why I like Pacifica. The point system just launched. Another reason why I really like them is because they've now flipped Jupiter and have become the #1 perp dex on Solana by volume. They also just reduced their fees for the next week, so 50% off trading fees for the next 7 days. So the TLDR on Pacifica then is that you are still definitely early to this one, and it's become a lot cheaper to trade on this for the next 7 days. And since we are incentivized for this one to start early in order to maximize the points, I do think that this is one of the best opportunities still out there. If you're going to be trading on Pacifica, I've got a couple of pro tips to maximize points. One, if you can, try to keep positions open for at least a couple of minutes to avoid those positions getting penalized. Apparently, the longer you keep them open, the better off you are in terms of the points. If you can actually trade profitably, there's also a boost for points, although that obviously is a little bit more difficult. And personally, I've never claimed to be a good trader. Now, obviously, it's a bit risky to keep positions open for longer, especially if you're using big leverage, like 50x leverage, for example. Not necessarily something I recommend. But if we do our delta neutral strategy, where I long ETH here on Pacifica and then short it over on Hyperliquid, then I can keep those positions open more comfortably and actually tick those boxes and hopefully maximize points. Another tip that I've learned is that apparently tokens that have lower open interest, which you can see if you just click here on the list of tickers you can trade and look at the ones and look at the total open interest for each token, the ones with lower open interest give higher points. All right, next up, I gotta talk about Ranger. This one I find to be quite interesting for a couple of reasons. So for starters, this isn't just another basic perps dex. Basically, it's a perp dex aggregator that tries to find you the cheapest option of all the other perp dexes to place your trades and to maximize, for example, the funding rates depending on where it can get the best rates. So right now they've integrated a bunch of Solana perp dexes like Jupiter and Drift, but they're also working on integrating Hyperliquid, Lighter, EdgeX, Pacifica, and potentially other ones. And this one I do think is interesting because they have a points program with the leaderboard right here. And then when you trade perps on the platform, I actually spoke to one of the team members and confirmed that if you move, for example, volume on Hyperliquid or Pacifica through Ranger, then you will also be getting points for those different potential airdrops. Now, on that second part of that, at this point, it's not actually integrated into the dashboard. Apparently they're working on that. So at this moment, it's kind of like a trust me situation. However, the team here is doxed. The product does seem cool and it's potentially worth checking out. Also, this one is relatively new compared to some of the other options, which does make it more attractive for farming purposes, in my opinion. Next up, we've got a couple that are super hyped, but that personally, I am not focusing on very much at this point. Lighter being one of them. This, if we go back to this slide here, has the most volume of all of the tokenless ones at this point. Neither Aster or Hyperliquid are included on this graph here because they already launched their tokens. But Lighter has been around for a long time. Their point system is similar to that of Pacifica, where there's a weekly amount of points that can be earned. And so you were incentivized to start this a lot earlier. Season 1 for this is literally ending tomorrow. So there's like 1 day left. And just the amount of trading volume that has been pushed through this platform to this point and how late it is in season 1 means that, yeah, you're definitely not early to this one. Maybe there will be other opportunities to farm this moving forward, as there is with, for example, Hyperliquid. But until we learn more details on how that's going to look, I personally would not be prioritizing Lighter. Although if you do have a lot of Lighter points at this point, I think it's probably going to be a cook. Another one that I'm personally not actually trading on is Aster. Although if you're on crypto Twitter, you've probably seen this all over the timeline. The DEX itself is super janky and hard to use. There have been a lot of issues, people's positions disappearing, for example, on the platform and then reappearing. So hopefully they're working that out. But also just in terms of the total number of people trading on it, apparently 3 million wallets, and the amount of volume that you're competing against is absolutely absurd. This is backed by Binance though, or at least associated with Binance. The token launched and has done quite well. So if you can get an allocation of this, it may be lucrative, but just given the amount of competition here, it's not something that personally I'm focusing on. They do have a points campaign on, and so if you want to check it out, by all means. But yeah, I will not actually be using this in my strategy of delta neutral farming for the reasons that I just mentioned. Okay, next we got to talk about Paradox. So this one I've also kind of left to the end here because while I do think it's actually a great platform for traders, for farming purposes, it is a little bit late as opposed to some of the other opportunities. So the reason why Paradox is really good right now is because they have zero fee trading. So if you're actually just looking to trade, then this could be a solid option. Then you may be asking, how do they make money? It's a different version of what Robinhood does, payment for order flow. But apparently, according to them, because it's an open market for market making, that the fees and the spreads on the trades are still quite low. So as a trading platform, definitely an interesting concept. But as a potential farm for airdrop farmers, they have been running their point season since February 1st, 2024. Season 2 has been running since January of this year, and then they just extended it again to buy more time until the TG of their Dime token for potentially up to 6 months. So yeah, this is basically like a 2-year farm, and it's already a year and 9 months into it. So not early here. And then finally, I do also have to mention EdgeX. Similar type of situation. They have a lot of wallets already trading on it, a lot of historical volume, over 100,000 addresses, over 113 billion in volume. And so if you trade on the platform, you're competing against that for points. But it's still potentially a solid option, especially if we consider it in the context of delta neutral farming strategies. And so the last couple of ones that I mentioned are a little bit late. I would still use them if I'm trying to, for example, hedge positions elsewhere, because they do still have points campaigns on and you can still get some rewards for using them. But my primary focus would be on ones that I mentioned earlier that I do think have more likelihood of providing value to farmers at this moment. Now let's talk about that strategy that I've been discussing, because I am a bad trader. Never claimed otherwise. And if you are too, or if you're worried about potentially losing money by going long or short these different tokens, something that you can consider doing is called delta neutral trading. And the TLDR on this is we will open similar sized positions in opposite directions on different platforms. So if, for example, I go to Pacifica and I want to trade ETH, I could open a 10x leveraged long on ETH here on Pacifica. So let's go ahead and do that. The size of this position is basically 1,000 US dollars. So we'll confirm the trade there. I love how fast this platform is actually. And then to hedge that position, I could go over to Based, which like I mentioned, is built on top of Hyperliquid, and then trade ETH here and do a short position of approximately the same size. Oops, I tried to do a limit order there. So let me cancel that limit order and just open up a market short for the same amount. So what I've got here is a $1,000 short on ETH on Based, and then on Pacifica, I've got a $1,000 long. So regardless of whether the price here goes up or down, I'm just trading to earn points. I was a little bit slow there, so ideally you kind of open up the positions at exactly the same time in order to have them be properly delta neutral. But the cost to this is the fee for opening and closing trades, which on Pacifica right now is 50% reduced. And then we have to pay in order to actually use leverage on these different platforms. And the funding rates do differ from platform to platform, depending also on whether you're going long or short. So I'm paying the funding rate and the fees to open and close these two trades. But what happens to the actual price of ETH at this point doesn't really matter to me. Now, I would also actually set up some stop losses for these if I was planning on leaving them long term. Otherwise, if I'm just planning on having them open for say 5-10 minutes, I might just monitor them. Some platforms like Lighter, for example, actually give bonuses for liquidations. And I've seen some people strategizing on actually being liquidated in order to maximize points. but I do think that is a little bit riskier. And you can repeat this strategy across all the different platforms, long, short, long, short, long, short, and just go back and forth in order to maximize your points and minimize the actual capital risk that you have. And then once these have been open for, let's say, 10 minutes, I could close them and try again. Now, before I leave you, a couple of ones to look for that haven't even launched yet, but I think will be decent opportunities. For starters, we've got Ethereal. This is the PerpDex platform that's actually backed directly by Athena Finance. So I've been actually making deposits here and have been trying to rank up the waitlist for a while. All that you can do right now is to make deposits and potentially get other people to sign up in order to move up the wait list. But once this does launch, I will definitely be pushing volume on it. And then another thing that was just literally announced today at an in-person presentation by MetaMask is that apparently they are going to be launching their own in-app Perps DEX with, it looks like, a points system. So when this launches, this will definitely be another one to look for, because I'm sure this will be a major factor for the mask airdrop, which we know is going to be coming. They've confirmed it. Aside from all of those options, I didn't mention every single one that was on this list here. And of course, there are other perp dexes. You can't farm absolutely all of them. I just highlighted the ones that I personally think have the best potential opportunities, but you never know. Some of these random smaller ones might end up cooking. And the fact that, for example, this bottom one, which I've literally never heard of, has only 2,500 users, opportunities like that could have outsized returns. But I haven't done any due diligence on that one, and I haven't even tried it yet, so I cannot recommend. So that is the TLDR on my delta neutral strategy here, and that is my breakdown of some of the best perp dex farming opportunities. Whether or not we can recreate the wealth generation effect of Hyperliquid Airdrop 1 remains to be seen, but I am still moving volume on Hyperliquid, and the other ones that I mentioned I'm prioritizing. So hopefully you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching and have a great day.